I think we might get started. Greg, are you ready to go?
I am actually, yeah.
Good to hear. Everybody, welcome to the webinar today from the OECD's Global Blockchain Policy Centre. I'm Caroline Malcolm and very happy to be bringing this webinar to you all today and sharing the expertise of a fabulous lineup of speakers that we have with you. I'll introduce you to each of those in a minute, but I wanted to start first with a quick poll to see what level of knowledge that we're all starting with in terms of China's blockchain ecosystem. So I'm just going to throw that up on the screen for those of you who are joining us by Zoom. Just ask you to indicate a little bit. Do you know very little through do you think you're an expert on China's blockchain ecosystem? And that will just give a few little insights to our audience, to our speakers at where to pitch their remarks today. So we appreciate you doing that. And perhaps while we're bringing that poll through, Greg, I might hand over to you, Greg Medcraft, the Director of the OECD's Directorate on Financial and Enterprise Affairs, to make some introductory remarks.
Great. Thank you, Caroline. And I'd just like to welcome you all to this OECD webinar on China's blockchain ecosystem, something I learned about a few years ago, and it's quite incredible. Over the past year, several OECD countries, including Australia, Switzerland and Germany have released national blockchain strategies, while other countries such as Italy have similar plans in the works. At the same time, we've seen a substantial push in China to further develop and widen the adoption of this technology. And just some killer facts, patent applications as of October 2019 accounted for 53% of out of China, accounted 53% of the world's total. And by December 2019, there were over 33,000 blockchain companies, 50 in China, 57% of them are startups, 23% of them were IT companies, and 12% of them were financial institutions. And that's the Blockchain Research Institute in China. Also, as an emerging blockchain market, China spending on the technology is forecast to hit $2 billion by 2023, according to IDC research, and total spending in China's blockchain market actually reached 160 million in 2018. However, there are some challenges, and we may hear about that today, such as a lack of talent and regulatory expertise, a lack of commonly accepted third-party certification, and a lack of innovations, and most companies rely on open-source blockchain, e.g. ETH and Hyperledger. But the incredible thing in China is the leadership from the top on this issue. President Xi Jinping issued a call last October to accelerate the development of blockchain and other industrial innovations, and we've seen two major developments since. First is the development of the blockchain-based services network, which is a piece of national digital infrastructure designed to provide a public architecture for blockchain applications and, most importantly, a standardized ways for blockchain systems to interface with other technologies like AI and the Internet of Things. And the state-backed BSN Development Association allocated $1 billion for the initial phase of this network and will be available to developers and users both inside and outside of China. And secondly, is the approaching launch of China's central bank digital currency, which has been under development for at least 5 years, because I think 4 or 5 years ago I went and spoke Bank of China on the issue. It's being piloted in some cities and businesses within China right now. While this digital currency will not be on blockchain per se, OECD's research into blockchain's potential into financial systems has long flagged the need for a natively digital currency in order to truly realize the benefits of blockchain technology. And one of the key activities here at OECD is to do what we're doing today, is to bring countries together to learn from one another and to identify best practices to avoid the pitfalls and, most importantly, to benchmark progress. So when it comes to blockchain development, this kind of international collaboration is important. because by definition, it's global technology. And, I mentioned before, some national strategies have been developed, but they shouldn't be formulated in a vacuum, because a policy environment for blockchain innovation that is fragmented between jurisdictions will not support the kind of international innovation that blockchain truly enables. So we created the OECD Blockchain Policy Centre, led by Carolyn, to act as a reference point for governments worldwide, and to provide a platform that supports exactly this type of collaboration. And so today we are looking to a country, as I said, whose commitment to blockchain innovation comes from the highest political levels, to see what lessons such an approach can offer, and to better inform policy elsewhere in the OECD and the world. So I'll hand back to you, Caroline. I look forward to hearing the discussion. Caroline.
Thanks, Greg. Good to hear those remarks, and I think particularly to hear the kind of high-level push that we've heard out of China to support blockchain innovation, but also some of the challenges that they've faced as well. So you should be able to see on your screen now the results from that first poll. So it looks like most people have a little bit of knowledge about what's happening in China, and hopefully we can help you deepen that today. There will be an opportunity to ask questions of the speakers in the last half hour of today's webinar. And so I really encourage you to do that. There's just some, for those of you who are joining us on Zoom, there's just some instructions there. If you would like to ask any questions, please put them in the Q&A. And then if you are joining us watching the live stream on YouTube, you can follow us on Twitter, use the hashtag OECD Blockchain, and we'll get those questions in as well and ask them at the end. But I want to now hand over to the expertise that we have in the speakers lined up today. I'd like to actually begin with two of the speakers who are joining us from Beijing. I'll introduce actually both of them together so that they can run over in their talks straight on from each other. So firstly, Søren Boutrup. Søren's from the Danish Foreign Ministry and is the Executive Director of Innovation Centre Denmark in Shanghai. He's leading a team focused on fintech, blockchain, edtech, healthcare, and sustainability. Søren has a lot of experience bringing an entrepreneurial and innovative mindset to the work he does with the Danish government over a number of different ministries, including in establishing the Mobile Fab Lab and the Rethink Challenge. But today he's going to tell us a little bit more about the Innovation Centre Shanghai. Søren is also joined by Ran Zhao. Ran is the Innovation Officer at the Innovation Centre Denmark in Shanghai, and she also founded the Blockchain Business Bridge between Denmark and China with the support of the Danish Industry Fund. She's the author of a recent report on China's blockchain ecosystem and her experience in innovation in both Denmark and China that she will be sharing with us today to talk about both the policy environment, but also the industry developments, not least, of course, China's digital currency and the more recently launched blockchain-based services network. So on that note, I'm handing over to you, Søren and Ran. Thanks very much. I will just stop sharing and you can also put up your presentation. There you go.
Thank you, Caroline, and thank you very much for inviting us to this exciting event. We are in Shanghai, not in Beijing, but it's still almost 10,000 kilometers away. My name is Søren, and I'm the director of the Danish Innovation Center here in Shanghai, and I have been here since the summer of 2018. Denmark have 8 of these innovation centers all over the world in what you could call the innovation hubs, according to our government's decisions the last 10 to 12 years. In Europe, we are based in Munich, in Germany, unfortunately not in Paris yet. The special thing about the Danish Innovation Center is that we refer to 2 different ministries in Denmark. One is the Foreign Ministry, and the other is the Ministry of Research and Higher Education. And at the same time, we work with Danish growth companies that have their base in the Danish Ministry of Business. So that gives us kind of a very special playing field within these three ministries to combine different elements. And in my opinion, Blockchain Business Bridge is a perfect example of that. In our daily work, we combine projects with startups and scale-ups, research institutions, universities, and large companies in both China and Denmark. And in my personal opinion, real innovation happens when two expertise areas meet that would not necessarily know each other from before. So we help to facilitate those connections when we can. We are now 14 people working in the Innovation Center in Shanghai, and we focus on 5 different areas. Caroline mentioned some of them. It's healthcare and life science, it's educational technology, it's green tech and sustainability, then it's entrepreneurship education together with the universities, and then of course, fintech and blockchain, as we will talk about today. My own experience with blockchain started in early 2017, where I first read about Vitalik Buterin, Ethereum and smart contracts, which is still my favorite subject. We don't have time to talk about it now, but I can't wait to see which kind of future business models will happen within these smart contracts. At the same time, I signed the contract for my new job in China. And of course, I started reading a lot about China and my new future experience. So I fell over NEO and saw that it was defined as the Chinese equivalent of Ethereum. So I invested a lot of my money, of course, thinking that China would bring future luck for me. Today, the value of NEO is exactly 5% of what I bought them for in 2018. Well, luckily I have RAN and Blockchain Business Bridge, so let us give the word to the founder herself, and I hope you will enjoy the seminar. Thank you.
Thanks, Søren. Hi, everyone. I am Ran. I work together with Søren at the Innovation Center of Denmark in Shanghai. My role is mainly specific on fintech and ICT. And the founding story of Blockchain Business Bridge is start from my personal interest in blockchain since 2018. By that time, whichever fintech-related forum we get into, blockchain is definitely a buzzword everybody's talking about. So I start to think about, we should probably do something about it. And in early 2019, the Industrial Fund of Denmark had this open call of blockchain initiative. We applied for it and we got funding for a 2 years project. Our partners behind the project also include the DI, Danish Industry, European Blockchain Center of IT University of Copenhagen, Danish Chinese Business Forum. There are 4 phases in our project. Today, I'm going to present the result of our first phase, a comprehensive mapping report of the blockchain ecosystem in China. For the next step, we're also going to have a series of knowledge exchange activities, both online and offline. In the fall of this year, we're going to have a bootcamp, a blockchain bootcamp, a celebrating program in both China and Denmark to help the Danish startups and blockchain project to build up their capacities in the global market. And at last, we want to allocate 2 incubators in both the Nordic and China to make sure that the business exchange between China and Denmark in blockchain can be sustainable. So today we're going to talk about the China's blockchain ecosystem. This is the report Caroline mentioned, which is published in May this year. I don't know how many of you have read it. If you haven't, I hope today's presentation can make you start to be interested in it. I know most of our audience today are policymakers or researchers in the field of blockchain technology. So let's start with policies and regulation. We all know that emerging technology development is sometimes rely on the policy environment. I'm not saying that what is happening in China now are all good, or it can also fit in your own market or country. But I hope at least what China has done can be inspired to some sort for you. So many people start to know about blockchain actually because of Bitcoin. Even though today, when we talk about blockchain, many people still related it to cryptocurrency, even though it is far from the only use. And this is not necessarily good for the development of a technology, because when the crypto market went up and down, people will start to have negative emotions or image for the underlying technology. This is also happening in China. So since 2017, the Chinese government has drawn a clear line between the coin and the chain. The cryptocurrency market and the blockchain market are regulated separately. Let's talk about cryptocurrency first. We all know that the Bitcoin price was dramatically soared in 2013, and start by then, a lot of new cryptocurrencies start to be introduced into the market. Many people get rich overnight. The hot money start to pour into the crypto market. Ordinary people like Sun start to invest there from their own pocket. Since 2016 and 2017, the scale of ICOs, initial coin offerings in China, was exploded. And it brings new risk to the financial market. By that time, as you remember, if you go to a conference under the topic of blockchain or fintech or digital economy, you will see white papers flying all over the room. People talk about ridiculous projects, really some of the fraud or illegal fundraising or even pyramid scheme are covered in the name of ICOs. It basically become a way to make easy money. So since the September of 2017, 7 authorities of China, leading by the People's Bank of China, have announced this statement to formally ban initial coin offerings in China. And these several authorities we can see here, they covered different perspectives from the political system. So it was really a serious boom into the market. But this does not mean that the Chinese government does not embrace the digital currency. Actually, the Central Bank of China, PBOC, has started to explore the launch of its own centralized digital currency since 2014. This is what's known today as DCEP, Digital Currency Electronic Payment. So it is a digital currency and electronic payment at the same time. What do we need to know about DCEP? First of all, it is positioning as the replacement of MO, which means cash. So it inherits the characteristic of physical cash in the sense that it does not have interest. It is a liability of the Central Bank of China. And DCEP has adopted a 2-tier operation system. What does it mean? It means PBOC, the Central Bank of China, serve as the upper layer, as the issuance of the digital currencies to banks and other financial institutions, firstly. And then the banks and financial institutions issue the DC to the public. Meanwhile, the banks pay 100% full reserve to the Central Bank of China to make sure that it does not overissue the digital currency. And it's also adopt a account loosely coupled system. We all know that in China, we are already into a cashless society, actually. We pay things with digital payments in Alipay and WeChat Pay all the time. But the difference is that Alipay and WeChat Pay, they are only a payment platform. So you have to have a bank account related to your account. So in a real name registration system, your transaction can never be anonymous. It's always related to bank. But in a DCEP, you do not need to have an account. All of the cash flows are only between you and the one you make transaction with. It does not appear on the balance sheet of the commercial bank or anywhere else other than the registration center of PBOC. And then it's tech neutral. Caroline asked me this question last time. Was blockchain part of the DCEP technology? The answer is yes or no. Yes and no. Behind the DCEP, there's a very comprehensive technology system. But central bank has been saying that in their upper level, they are open for all technologies. They are willing to adapt to all the technologies. And the commercial banks have the freedom to explore all technology, including blockchain. It will be a long-term evolution behind the technology of the DCEP. And then the market will decide which one to survive at last. But if you're interested to discuss about the pros and cons of blockchain in the application of the CEP, we can probably discuss it in the Q&A session. And then let's move to the underlying technology blockchain. Even though the cryptocurrency has been regulated tightly in China, the underlying technology blockchain has actually always been encouraged from the central government. Since 2016, the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology released this white paper on China's blockchain technology and application development. It further introduced the development roadmap of China's blockchain technology, as well as the future directions and current process of blockchain in China, which is very much a pioneer by that time. And 2 months after, the State Council of China issued the 13th 5-year National Informalization Plan. If you're not familiar with the 5-year plan of China, it is a very important central policy agenda. Each of the 5 years we have this plan. It's the guidelines of the direction of the country goes. So in a top-down system like China, what's written in the 5-year plan are really means a lot. And in September 2016, 19 ministries and commissions have included blockchain in the national development guidelines again. In later October 2019, in the official meeting, first time President Xi Jinping expressed his own attitude of blockchain technology, which was really a big encouragement for all of the industrial players in blockchain. And ironically, the price of Bitcoin was again after that speech, even though it's not related. But it's also very important for the local level to to issue their own policies to make sure that the concrete case can be on the floor. From the 3 years period since 2016 to 2019, there's statistic that 29 out of 34 provinces and cities in China have issued altogether 149 blockchain-related policies across the country. All of the major cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen have their own blockchain encouragement for the companies and industry players locally. So under these beneficial policies, how does the China's blockchain ecosystem look like? Let's have a look. Talk about the major players in the market. Just look at the size. Let's have a guess. Who do you think is the big blue in this picture? We can actually have a vote here. You can use this. Where is that? You can use this annotate function in your Zoom and mark the answers which you think is right with a star.
Unfortunately, I don't think we can mark it up, Ran, but I'll take my guess, which is that the startups are the big blue box.
Let's have a look at the answer. Exactly. And following by the internet giant companies, the financial institutions, and the traditional big companies. So China really have a very active startup scene in the blockchain industry in terms of the underlying technology and infrastructure, the applications, the vertical industry applications, and relevant services like media, communities, wallet, and so on. It covers the whole industry chain. But at the same time, nearly all of the Chinese internet giants have been involved in blockchain projects, and many of them have actually launched their own blockchain as a service product. Let's take Alibaba as an example, the biggest e-commerce company in China. They have now 3 technology frameworks, including a self-developed Ant blockchain, a Hyperledger Fabric, and an Ethereum for enterprise. The financial arm and the payment service provider of Alibaba, Ant Finance, has been actively collaborating with the government and financial institutions. So far, they have dozens of blockchain projects in various business scenarios. For example, cross-border payment, electronic bill, supply chain finance, retail, and so on. And then Tencent, the other giant, actually they just excel. Alibaba became the most valued internet company in China recently. They have set up their blockchain team since 2015. And in 2018, Tencent Cloud launched the blockchain service called TBAAS, which provides the users with a one-click blockchain deployment service with multiple functions such as business channel management, smart contract management, and so on. And also Huawei, the biggest ICT companies in China, Jingdou.com, another big e-commerce company, Baidu, they have all blockchain-related companies. With their effort, will the picture change in the first slide? Will the startups still dominate the market? It's hard to say. And then we're going to talk about the financial institutions. Actually, the financial industry has been the most popular blockchain adopted sector in China. By the end of 2019, there are 39 banks in China has initiated blockchain-related projects from the central bank, the policy bank, state-owned bank, to the city-level bank. And there are 3 areas which are most popular in terms of adaptation of blockchain. They are digital assets, credit and loans, supply chain finance, but also payment and settlement, of course, has always been in the picture. And also the big insurance company has also started to explore the opportunity to use blockchain to enhance their own efficiency. Today we have a real expert in this field, Frank Wu from Ping An One Connect. I will shut up and leave the topic to him for real cases. And then remember that in that picture, listed companies, by that I mean those big industry players listed on the Chinese share A market, they are the smallest part. They play only the other corner with a very small part. But actually, from the statistics, we can see they are 247 Chinese listed companies has been involved in blockchain. And altogether, it accounts for 10% of the Chinese stock market, Chinese A-share stock market, which is quite impressive. And they are not just make a small investment or just collaborating with a consultancy company. Actually, 3/4 of them actually develop blockchain projects by invest their own manpower in an in-house R&D team, which again shows the seriousness of blockchain has been taken by those big companies. Here I can show an example of Wanxiang Group, which is also a partner of Blockchain Business Bridge. Who are they? They are the biggest automotive components manufacturer in China. And they are what we call the old and giant company. They are more than 50 years old. They have more than 40,000 employees. These companies, we have a cliche picture of that they are not embracing the new emerging technologies. But Wanxiang started to invest in blockchain since 2015. And they have now created their own blockchain ecosystem. They have the R&D center, the blockchain lab. They have more than 200 staffs in their development team. They have their own open source consortium blockchain platform, and they have their own venture capital, 分布式, which is one of, and Hashtag, which are the biggest, which are two of the biggest, most oldest venture capital in terms of blockchain. They have incubated many excellent projects. Some of them we know about. Since 2005, they have been invested more than $20 million in the field of blockchain. And what it brings to them? First of all, it's definitely beneficial to their own product. Now they can use blockchain to trade all of their products. They can see the future of cars will be smart vehicle, will be electronic vehicles. By adopting technologies, they can tap into the smart city and smart energy solutions. They have more ambitions in the future. So when we talk about also big companies in Denmark, we feel like it's really difficult to convince them to start learn about blockchain and do something with it. Many of them saying that we don't want to be the front runner, but the picture is totally different in China. Actually, many of the traditional companies, they're competing with each other, want to be the first one to be on the battleground. And we can see China has a big blockchain market rapidly developing. There is a comprehensive ecosystem, but if you want to work with China, where should you start? We have provided answer for you. There are 3 key blockchain clusters in China, namely Beijing and Xiong'an area in the north, the Yangtze Delta River area, where Shanghai locates, and also Hangzhou, the home of Alibaba, and the Pearl River Delta region, where Shenzhen, the innovation hub of China, locates. So for the next step, we are going to have our first boost camp in both China and Denmark to support the Danish companies. For the first phase of this project, we are collaborating with Danish partners, and we are sponsored by the Danish industry funds. So our focus are mostly between China and Denmark. But in the long run, our ambitions are aiming globally. So if you are interested in the blockchain market in your own region, or if you want to tap into the blockchain ecosystem, you are more than welcome to contact us.
Thank you so much, Rand. Thank you, Soren. Really, that was just a fantastic overview on what is happening on both the policy side and then a little bit of an introduction to industry. I guess a couple of takeaways from me, you know, there's obviously a very different approach in the government, whether we're talking about cryptocurrencies and tokens, where, you know, you have bans and limitations on place, versus the underlying technology, so distributed ledger technologies, including blockchain, where we've seen some very high-level support from the government in terms of trying to see in greater investment and development of that industry. And I think that's a really interesting distinction. And also, you know, as Greg mentioned at the start, that this thinking has been, you know, this is not something that just happened yesterday. I mean, thinking about the digital currency since 2014, you know, 5-year plan in 2016, which sort of established DLT as a critical strategic frontier technology for China. And we've just seen things continue to build since then. And really, that was a great overview. And thank you very much. For those who are interested, Rand is the author of a fantastic report on China's blockchain ecosystem. And I encourage you all to, if you want to deep dive a little bit more into some of the things she was talking about, to also have a read of that. But on that note, I want to turn now to one of our other speakers, and I'll give him a chance, Frank, to put up your slides, which hopefully you'll be able to share now. Frank, and Frank is from one of the companies that has been referred to already by Ran, from Ping An One Connect. He's the General Manager of the DLT Research and Solutions Division. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Ping An, it's a conglomerate which began as an insurance company and today works also across the banking and financial services sector. Frank himself has a wealth of technical experience, including as the co-founder of the well-known Hyperledger. Frank, I might just keep you on mute for a minute because I think we're getting some feedback. The well-known Hyperledger Fabric protocol. He was the co-founder of that protocol, which was established by the Linux Foundation. And he's been leading some really exciting projects at Ping An, which I'll let him talk about. But we're talking about things like the China Customs Authority, the Hong Kong-based E-Trade Connect trade finance platform, and the Guangdong blockchain financing platform, which is aimed at speeding up loans processing for small to medium enterprises. So on that note, Frank, over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Caroline. Can y'all see my screen?
Not yet, Frank, but it seems to be coming up.
It's still loading?
Still loading.
That's strange. Well, let me start share again, because sometimes I guess switching may cause a problem. Do you guys see it now?
No, we can't see it yet, Frank, but if there is a problem, if it doesn't come up in another second or two, I can bring up your presentation on my screen and you just have to tell me when to change slides. Do you want to go ahead like that?
You know what? Let me give you one more try. Do you guys see it now? I'm sharing my screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. So I guess I can't share the application, but I can share the screen. Okay. Okay, great, awesome, great to be here. Thanks, Caroline, for the invitation, and it's really great honor to be here to talk about Ping An's story to all the audiences. So I'm going to jump in. So I do consider we are one of the outliers in China. Outlier meaning that we do things a little bit differently. A lot of it is because of things I learned while I was with IBM, because I was the first product manager for the Hyperledger Fabric. And then I joined the Ping An, and I learned a lot of things. And some of the story about blockchain is nice, but it just doesn't work. For example, people talk about like data sharing, but honestly, nobody's going to share data with nobody. And unless you're doing some charity work, data sharing just don't work. And smart contract improve. A lot of people say smart contract improve efficiency, but honestly, if you have access to data and if you're connected, you just make it point-to-point connections. Your work is fast, if not better, than DLT. So then we look at DLT. What can we do? So I'm going to introduce our architecture, and then I'm going to show you how we actually apply in the real world. I think the goal here is to create something that's actually useful, not something that can easily replaceable by standard or existing technology, which is also cheaper. So the technology we use is so we use an architecture which I call it like the fully encrypted architecture. So that means all the data on the blockchain. For example, I'm going to take this data. This is a purchase order created by one of the vendors, and once it's on the blockchain, all the data will be encrypted. So, and every single data field will be encrypted with a unique secret key. So every data field from every participant will be encrypted with a unique key. And the only data that's actually getting disseminated across the blockchain network are actually the encrypted data. So why we want to do that? So we wanted to create a single point of truth. The goal is so that all stakeholders of a data record access, read, and modify the same data they're using. For example, a purchase order may have 100 data fields. I'm simplifying to show 4 for the sake of the presentation. And we use we generate like 150 keys for each data field, and the data is getting disseminated across the DLT network. And we use a crypto control to say who can access and view and or edit which data field. So for example, only the logistic provider can provide something like a title or more importantly, the shipment. And the custom, once you go to the China custom, they're probably gonna provide more data like a bill of entry, and they get to see the amount, because you remember the amount on the purchase order is actually provided by the vendor. So they get to see the amount because they're gonna charge tax on the purchase on the shipment. And then obviously you take the purchase order, eventually may go to a bank to get loans from the bank to help the cash flow of the manufacturer, and the bank can see some of the data fields. So what you can see here is different participants, they all access, view, and edit the same purchase order, but they all have a different rights. Some can view field 1 and 4, but some view fields 2, 3, and 4, and some have the right to actually modify some data fields, and some just have the right to actually see the data field. And this is actually important because you see the field number 4 is amount, right? So because we have everybody is a stakeholder of a piece of data, I'll get access the same data, so that if the vendor is going to say if the purchase order has $100 million and the vendor is going to pay, say 20 million, 2 million, just to pay less taxes to the customs, then he's gonna not gonna get much money from the banks to finance his operation. And on the other hand, if they wanted to report 20 million out of 10 million, then you probably get more financing from the banks, but you're gonna end up paying more taxes to the customer and to the tax organization of that country. So if we, a lot of people talking about how to make the truthful, how to make the data truthful, and I think the one thing that people often miss is that if they have all the stakeholders all have access to the same data, because on this network you also got insurance company, you got shipment company, you got the port. If everybody is accessing the same piece of data, the data is getting stretched. The stretch means if you report higher in some cases, then you have to pay for the consequences in some other places. So if, for example, getting loans from the bank versus paying taxes to the tax department. Report more, pay more taxes. Report less, get more loan, get less loan. So that's a consequence. But then, and some other participant on the data are probably not going to see anything. That's basically what other parties, what's been labeled as other parties here. But it's not actually enough. So we also developed the granular control. It doesn't really solve all the problem, because most of the times we just can't share data. We cannot share keys. We just cannot be shared. So we introduced a 3D ZKB technology. It's actually something we developed in-house. It's a technical term. It's actually in the parentheses. It's the fact hiding NIZK arguments for arbitrary arithmetic operations. So that's the technical name. It's something that actually we will publish later this year, and it's not really a proposal. It's something we've been using for a few years, and it has hundreds of gigabytes of data, if not petabytes of data, running. So, what does it do? So we want to give, say, a bank, if they want to verify the data, the bank can specify a verification rule. So verification rule number 1, which is a basic arithmetic equation with basic arithmetic operations, a plus, minus, multiplication, and a division. And then the bank, if a bank want to validate, so they specify verification rule, and the bank also specify the statement, the data they want to verify. But they don't really give the statement or the fact to the data approver, which is the data owner on the blockchain network. So what it does is the prover will take the equation, arithmetic equation, and do the calculation with their data, and send back the secret statement and the result, and the proof of the result. So the bank, only the bank know the secret statement. So the bank will verify that after executing the arithmetic equation, we're going to get the secret statement. Because the secret statement can be a account receivable, the amount on an account receivable, say $20 million. But to verify the account receivable, you give the equation will be executed on a bunch of encrypted inputs that's actually stored on the blockchain. And another example, obviously, have to specify more verification rules, which are arithmetic equations, and then send the equation to the data owner, and the data owner will use the input. Because the reason you use the input on the DLT is because that's for the bank to verify the execution of the arithmetic equation. And then the key here is fact hiding, which means the number or the data you verify is hidden from the data owner, because the data owner, there could be more data owners, and you don't want them to tell them the number on the account receivable, because that will be a data leak. So one thing we realized is something very important. It's a data. It's actually so important that nobody's going to share data with nobody. It's a lot of times you cannot even get data out of the database, out of the data store. And that happens a lot in the cross-border blockchain transactions. And in China, one of the challenges is get different government departments to actually collaborate. But they are all independent ministries. They have an ownership, each minister has the ownership of their own data. How do you get them to cross-validate the data that has different owner? So we use this technology to do cross-chain or cross-data store data verification across multiple government departments or agencies. Here, give an example of 3D ZKP in practice. I'm going to again use the trade finance as an example, because that's something we do a lot of trade finance related stuff, including the customs for the China customs, for the even for the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. The E-Trade Connect was actually built on based on a similar technology. Same thing for the Guangdong and a lot of other things. We actually do a data center for a lot of major cities in China.
Frank,
let's say give example, right? An invoice and the purchase order so the invoice is usually created by the seller, and the purchase order is created by the buyer. If you have both data on the DLT network and you want to validate if the invoice is accurate, you take the purchase order amount and to cross-validate whether the encrypted amount on the purchase order matches the encrypted amount for the invoice. It could be a one-to-one or a one-to-many or many-to-many type of mapping, but by the end of the day, they should match in some way. If they don't, then something's wrong. Again, nobody's going to share data with nobody.
Frank, I'm just going to jump in there for a minute, if you don't mind. I'm just going to ask you to move through and maybe give the customs example, just because I know we're getting close to time.
Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, Frank, can you hear me okay? Frank, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I guess, I don't know, I got this.
Yeah, Frank, can you hear me okay?
So, thing can't just keep on jumping up. And then if they match the invoice amount, then it's good. If they don't, then something's. I think it goes to the other things. Once you get the purchase order, you get finance from the bank A and you get finance from bank B. But if you don't have $100 million on your purchase order, because bank A and bank B are disconnected, you can actually take 50 million as a collateral to get finance from bank A, and then 70 million as a collateral to get finance from bank B. But if you add a 50 million to the 70 million, you actually exceed $100 million on the purchase order. So that's the over-financing activity. So we're using blockchain and the 3D technology to verify for bank B, if I were to actually accept this.
Sorry, Frank, I'm just going to jump in there. If I could just ask you to move through to
I can't hear you, Caroline.
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with your audio, Frank. I think everyone else can hear me okay.
Hello?
Yeah, Frank, can you hear me okay? Frank, what we might do is I might get Jane to
okay.
Because I think you're having some trouble hearing us, and we'll come back for you to conclude in a moment.
I can't hear you, Caroline. Sorry, I think you're on mute.
Yeah. Jane, if you can hear me okay, we might get you to kick off with your presentation, Jane.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good, Jane. Good to hear. So for those of you who don't already know Jane, she is a full professor at the Xi'an Jiaotong University and has a postdoc from the University of Florida. Her research is focused on the digital economy, blockchain and digital currency, and she's published an academic book on the financial derivative markets analysis from this perspective of financial security. So I think she has a lot to say on what's been happening in China. She's been doing some really interesting research lately into the state of the blockchain scene in China. And so, Jane, please share those insights with us.
Okay. Thank you, Caroline. So, I'll begin?
Yes, we're great.
Okay. So, good evening and good morning to everyone online, and dear Frank and Caroline. And it is my great honor to be invited to participate in today's webinar. And, you know, in the past few years, from ICO and to nowadays PBOC's DCEP, blockchain technology has experienced several ups and downs in China. And especially after October 21st last year, President Xi Jinping issued a lecture on blockchain. And application scenarios are gaining momentum, and the weight of blockchain is just on the rise. In China, cross-border financial blockchain service platform, which is run by State Administration of Foreign Exchange, has expanded to 17 pilot cities now to help the SMEs cross-border financing. As of June 1st, 2020, the service platform has accepted a total of 31,207 financial operations. Yeah, and it completed 30,682 loans, of which about only 4,400 are Chinese yuan. And the total number of the company applying for the financing amounted to 4,040. And from March 2019 till now, there are about 500 blockchain information services registered in Cyberspace Administration of China. And China has already established a good number of very ambitious projects in both the private and public sector. And today, what I want to share is some cognition of feelings we gained from the survey and interviews. Since the summer of 2017, we keep on communicating with blockchain R&D teams, startups, and consulting teams, and we repeated asking and asked a question. Why do we need blockchain? Why? Who needs it? And how do we need it? Where and when will the blockchain change production relationships or the information internet disruptively, like what we heard. As for why blockchain is needed, what we heard most is trust. And let's see who is not trusted. Is it the national currency that is constantly issued due to the inflation, or the food manufacturer, or the bank, or SMEs without stable business conditions? And before I answer all these questions, I will give you a closer set to one of the very popular application scenarios, source tracing. Like logistics, RFID technology, IoT technology, they give great help. But in fact, if you cannot produce food yourself, mostly you still have to rely on the manufacturer's social responsibility and consent. The data on the outer packaging are written from outside. It cannot bring more security support than in the era of QR codes. But maybe the price may be more expensive. Yeah, and there are similar situations in the fields of vaccines, wines, copyrights, charity, and so on. If the data is not generated on the chain, but is in external input, the authenticity of the data, it still depends on the verification and endorsement again, I think. And that's what happened, and we use a lot of technology as CA, as another endorsement technology. And new technology actually are waiting in line. But who is the one really want blockchain? From my point of view, those who do not get the trust they deserve are the really demanders. And countries, banks, enterprises, and individuals, whoever desires to be trusted more, will lack blockchain. But blockchain can provide something more than ledgers and prove your credit. For example, DCEP, I saw that in the investigation in the poll on the screen, there are many ones who are very interested in DCEP. Why China need DCEP? We have Alipay, we have WeChat Pay, why we need DCEP? Caroline asked me. And what I can say is because of the development level of international recognition of renminbi, Chinese yuan does not match the real economy status. And that's why renminbi, that it didn't have what the trust it deserved. So DCEP is coming out. And it is calling that more partners can join us. And unlike other countries, China clearly advocates consortium blockchain. Cash, bank, large enterprises, no matter trusted or not, you really have any opportunity to reject it. They seldom have trust problem actually in China, and they make trust also. But blockchain, by blockchain technology, chained ones form a new trust we call alliance. By decentralization, new centers formed, and we saw a lot of alliances are organizing activities and even regulating the industry development on blockchain by making new standards. And some of this influenced the local government decision-making and the local industry development direction. And the chain of trust, the most frequently rejected one are probably the blue part, the SMEs. How many? 30 million SMEs in China. And they contribute 90% of the total number of enterprises and 80% of urban employment, 70% of innovation, 60% of the GDP, and 50% of taxation. But they actually breathe the sinister part of the financial air. This is the base for the prosperity of financial service providers such as Ping An and Financial and so on. SMEs get credit by using historical trading records on the supply chain, and the business partner just need to confirm the trade itself, not need to guarantee for the loan. So some larger institutions that already have very great credit, they also want to use blockchain. They want to make their advantage more obvious and to promote business compliance, such as Ping An and Financial did. And in practice, how to use blockchain technology, we also heard a lot of voices asking that blockchain technology bypasses finance. And they hope that blockchain technology innovation focuses on licensed operation. Applications are carefully divided into financial or non-financial. I found most reports did this, and so did today's. As a very good practical case, Hangzhou Internet Court effectively deal with illegal funding raise and the P2P online loan dispute by using blockchain technology. And it is non-financially, maybe, financially, maybe. And somehow innovation in itself is a change and it involves destruction and rebirth. And we're thinking, if everything is just the same as before, so who will just apply the technology at no cost, like a lot of enterprises did. So in the survey, we found no matter how the solution demonstrates that it is safe, reliable, high privacy, managers gradually realized from the market that data flow brings data exchange, and data exchange move toward data sharing. And the next step that may happen is information barrier diminished indeed. Well, as a big enterprises and a function department, the data factor has already handed over and flown away, and the advantages decreased and even disappeared. Of course, through mergers and reorganizations, we lost something and got some new things, up to another form of information. And as you can see, big data bureaus established as a new department in many cities and provinces, and many business solutions are given in order to solve and deal with related issues like data's ownership and the right to use. And I think Jean-Peter said, technological innovation is a kind of creative destruction. As a new technology, blockchain has its own very unique charm. Whenever I got lost in complex situation of regulation on blockchain, I will think of my tutor's words. The motivation for innovation is to evade supervision sometime and most time. So most licensees have no incentive to innovate, but the one who want to obtain the license or have no access to, but have interest and ability to do, they abandon themselves in finding a way out, seek help from technology, just like blockchain. And blockchain has been included in the construction of new infrastructure in China's 5-year plan, new 5-year plan. For large-scale basic infrastructure, it is not only means a great cost, but more practice and safety. Also, we found blockchain chained data together by supply chain or in a specific program a lot more than before. But mostly, the ones chained are initially very intimate in strategy. So if it is not open and inclusive enough, thus new isolated chain island will appear again. The good news is stock market love it, and many stock gains share price because of blockchain concept. So there's still a long way to go. A friend in his field told me a story that there's not better digital camera, it's the digital camera, but the mobile phone has a camera. Anyway, the part research on digital camera is still very meaningful for better life and for our next generation. So I think this is also our initial heart and the mission of continuous exploration on the road of blockchain technology research. And I believe in that China's blockchain technology is on the rise. And I think today I wanted to share my point of view, like what I did. Thank you very much. Thank you, Caroline.
Thanks a lot, Jane. That was really great. And I just think interesting perspective there on kind of the role that it may or may not play on data sharing, and also I guess the fact that perhaps the big companies who have invested so far maybe aren't the ones who will be using it and who are actually seeing value in it. And I think some interesting points that that we heard before that I think connected with what Frank was talking about. And one of the things I love about Frank, there's no hype, just straight to the point. To explain blockchain is not the answer. And exactly, really try to identify where it can add value and not apply it to everything. And on that note, we might bring Frank back in if we can get you back, Frank. Joanna, I might just ask you to stop.
Okay. Okay.
We'll hand back to Frank just to wrap up, and if we've got him back on back with us.
Thanks, Caroline. Let me try again. Let me give another try. Yeah, strange things happen, but it's all good. So I'm just gonna jump in and see like the things the we did, because we did a blockchain network, and now we're actually in the process of actually interconnecting these blockchain networks. So one thing is like we build a network for say a trade finance in Hong Kong, and another one in Guangdong, and then we actually also build a blockchain network for customs and the commerce department. But the problem is, once you have a disconnected DLT networks, you also got, again, you got data settle. And you don't have to worry about the business, this is a business flow for cross-border trade, but don't have to worry about the detail, but just notice that there are a lot of steps. Actually, this is actually simplified. But by the end of the day, because they're disconnected, it's still very easy to create fraudulent transactions, because two companies can easily collude. In two companies belonging to two different networks can easily collude. So our solution here is actually, since we built, the trade finance platform for the DLT network for provincial government and for Hong Kong, and we also built the trade network for customs, and we're able to actually connect the two. As the cross-border trade happened between a company, a manufacturer based in mainland China versus somewhere based in Hong Kong or even other part of the world, or other part of China, the transaction the data is actually getting created simultaneously in two different networks. Again, don't have to worry about the actual data, what they mean, but notice that the data are being created simultaneously on two different networks. But how to validate a truthfulness of a trade, because people use a purchase order as a collateral, and how do you validate that? So we basically set up a bank. We just make a bank have access to both networks. So they take the encrypted data, because again, if we wanted to make a data valuable, the first thing we have to do is making sure it's fully private. One of the reasons we don't use channels or side chains or multi-chains is because these things just turn out to be point-to-point connections. And you can easily use existing technology to do these things. But the blockchain provides value is it creates a single record of truth. So with the 3D ZKP technology I mentioned earlier, a bank can take the purchase order data and the BE data, bill of entry data from custom network, and then compare them to the SO data and the invoice data created on the trade finance network, and validate if they match. If they match, that's good. Then again, let's validate the logistic data. You take the manifesto, bill of entry, and the P&L, and the validated logistic data. If the data created on two different networks match, then you have some kind of guarantee that the data is valid. Actually, this is the end of, okay, I'm gonna go over, this is something that's very easy for the eTrade Connect. This is actually something we did way early. So the goal of a blockchain is actually interconnect different platforms, not creating a blockchain for a platform. Because the importer may use, say, a bank A, is their bank, and to use the bank A's platform to create a purchase order. And the exporter may use bank B's platform to create to validate the purchase order. So an importer create a purchase order on bank A's platform, and exporter validate the PO creation from bank B's platform. So that's really cool. And obviously you can take them to get financed. And once the invoice gets created, remember the exporter created an invoice on bank B's platform, but the invoice getting created on exporter on bank B's platform can be cross-matched to the purchase order created by importer on bank A's platform. So you use actually blockchain to match data, and once the data is matched, people have confidence to finance the transaction. And that's the end of it. Thank you, Caroline, for the extra time.
No, we're glad to get you back, Frank. As I said, I both love what you do, and I love how you're from your experience, you speak so frankly about kind of the realities of this technology, which are just so often overhyped. And on that note, I might, we've got some questions coming in from the audience, but I want to hear first from Ethan. So Ethan Pierce is the founder of Borderless Ventures, which is focused on French tech, CE and ASEAN startups. And he's also the director of the Crypto Assets Institute. He's a former managing partner at Nest Venture Capital, as well as a serial entrepreneur himself in the digital and e-commerce space. So he's going to bring a perspective which is what's happening in China, but also, you know, blockchain across the world more generally, in particular in Asia and in Europe. Just before we get started, Ethan, I might just remind everybody that if you have any questions, please send them to Elodie Pierre. Elodie will send another message out to everybody, if I could ask you, Elodie. So to send your questions through to her, and we'll get a chance to get to those shortly. But I guess, Ethan, first thoughts on what you've heard so far.
Yeah, so you hear me okay? Everything good? All right. Fantastic report. Great work, Ran and Soren. It was a pleasure to get to read all of the work that you put into that and the results. Thanks, Caroline and the OECD for the invitation to join. It's been very enriching so far to listen to all of this expertise. Frank and Joanna as well for your presentations. It was a great intro, so it kind of connects that. Just, you know, why the context? Why am I kind of in this space? You kind of connected it there with kind of what I've done as in terms of entrepreneurship in digital and e-commerce. Nest was a Hong Kong fund. I was managing partner for Europe, but I spent a lot of time in Singapore over 3 years helping execute innovation accelerators that we built with OCBC Bank, DBS Bank, AIA Insurance, Singapore Power, and a bunch of others. And those were primarily fintech, insurance, smart cities type programs. So blockchain and crypto assets were very important ingredients in many of the business problems we were solving with startups. When I left Nest in 2017, I continued that venture advisory work through Borderless Ventures, helping startups scale across Europe, Southeast Asia, and North America. But I also created the Crypto Assets Institute, a nonprofit advisory where I've been helping governmental organizations, large corporations, and investment funds on questions of regulation, adoption, tokenized securities, and enterprise blockchain. So a big part of that has been keeping an eye on what all these different ecosystems around the world are doing. So people like, well, Ran and Frank and Joanna and all of you have the pulse on the details of what's going on in China to a greater detail than myself. But I'm kind of doing the 80-20 thing where I'm trying to get trying to master as much as I can of as many of these ecosystems as possible to be able to compare kind of what's going on around the world in these places. It's clear that China is doing fantastic work in this space. I'm looking forward to getting to visit and to see a little bit more about what's going on there. Before COVID, I was traveling about half the time speaking on tokenized securities and enterprise blockchain. I did about 26 countries last year, about 2 keynotes a week. Obviously, that's all stopped. So now it's home and lots of Zooms, but I'm looking forward to getting to see all the amazing stuff that's going on in China. I think what's really important is compared to a lot of Western markets, blockchain is not China's future. It really is its present. I think that's a phrase I've seen repeated in several places where this is not just something that is being worked on as a future initiative. This is something that is being scaled already significantly, both a bit in the crypto asset space, but more importantly in the blockchain economy. I'll look at a little bit of those few different things, but I would like to separate those two ideas. We like to mix up crypto and blockchain a lot, and it's important to realize that a tremendous amount of what's going on in blockchain has absolutely nothing to do with crypto assets and cryptocurrencies. The tokenization piece is just not a part of that. We're talking about the ledger and how it can increase transparency and trust in all these different places that we're going to look. What we would tend to see then is, crypto assets as this idea of the umbrella subject over cryptocurrencies, but also any kind of an asset that is being represented in a digital or tokenized way. And what we see is a lot of the several of the ecosystems that have come out toughest on cryptocurrencies and crypto-based fundraising, like China and Korea and India, are very much embracing the blockchain economy in a very significant degree. So In these places like the US, where we're still struggling to create a unified national strategy on blockchain technology and the SEC in terms of crypto assets regulation, China has included blockchain along with AI as a major strategic technology goal in the 13th five-year plan. I'm always amazed at this idea of the 10th or 12th or 13th five-year plan. It's so entrepreneurial and so fantastic about setting goals and moving towards the future. And unfortunately, a tremendous amount of the innovation ecosystems in the West are not, they don't have a goal-oriented approach to really taking this on. And because of that, China has made tremendous advances on specifically around the blockchain economy. So we'll talk a little bit very quickly about the crypto asset space, but really the only main subject that really touches in China is the central bank digital currency, because when it comes to crypto, the crypto-based fundraising, so the ICO space, STO, all that kind of things, and cryptocurrency exchanges are not legal in China because the ability to convert fiat, Chinese RMB to and from cryptocurrencies is prohibited. So that's not something that we're seeing a lot of movement in. However, the central bank digital currency topic is a fantastic one. But we'll talk a little bit first about the enterprise blockchain space, or maybe about the ecosystem stuff a little bit more, and then some enterprise blockchain, and then wrap that up with the crypto asset stuff. I think just the idea is really about leadership, like the AI ecosystems around the world as well. And China has put out a very strong, strategic-minded, goal-oriented process to become a leader in this space. A tremendous amount of it is public and private together, which is very important. It's not just public initiatives, or it's not like a lot of the stuff in the US where it's just private having to do it on their own because the government hasn't really stepped up to create a national program in this space. It's a little bit, fractional across Europe, where there are some amazing things on the EU and regional and national levels. But there's also a tremendous amount of what's going on in the blockchain and crypto asset space is primarily a private. And so the uniqueness of this public-private partnerships and the way that has succeeded in China is very important to be understood. Just to touch on a few different points that when I read the report to bring up, venture capital is something that is definitely scaling well in China when it comes to blockchain projects. That is primarily being injected into Chinese blockchain projects, but that is typical of most innovation and venture capital, because it's not easy to move capital across the border. So most funds in China are investing into Chinese startups. Companies like funds like Finbushi, however, have, because they have established things outside of China as well, like in Singapore, they've also made significant investments in things like Ethereum and Polkadot and other things like that. But most of the VC investments in China are into the Chinese ecosystem itself. In terms of startups, rapidly scaling startup ecosystem. It's crazy how many startups just in general in China, hardware startups in Shenzhen, all kinds of digital things across the country and in Shanghai and Beijing. But the blockchain ecosystem is incredibly strong and growing tremendously. I would say one of the places where China is still catching up is with education around blockchain. I think they've got some excellent blockchain training programs and university programs in China. But the last data that I have still shows really US, Canada, India, and Switzerland training or retraining and converting a lot more engineers in this space. But that's not to say that China is not one of the leaders in this, because apart from those 4 or 5, China is well past pretty much everybody else in the world. But I do think, like most of these other ecosystems, they are also suffering from not nearly enough blockchain engineers to scale all the projects that are trying to be built. But that's really a global problem, which is why the retraining, retasking of engineers is really such a priority to get people who are developers in other spaces to be able to do blockchain development. China is pretty much ahead of everybody else except the US when it comes to intellectual property in the blockchain space. The latest data that I have is around 56,000 patent applications for the US, around 53,000 for China, around 49,000 for Japan, and then it's 4,000 to 5,000 each for most European countries. That's at least a year old, if not 2 years old. So I know it's not going to be completely accurate, but I think the trends have kind of been chasing that same still pattern of it's the US and China leading that. I think China, if they haven't already taken the lead, although it's hard to measure that, they will. That's for sure. And so that's an important thing to be understanding, that while China, a lot of the blockchain economy stuff that's going on in China is focused on China, China is positioning itself to be the global player. And so the intellectual property piece of that is going to be very important. And so I think we'll see that coming more and more. So if we look back then at this idea of the central bank digital currencies, Libra really launched the chase to create a sovereign central bank digital currency. But the reality is that China had been working on their digital currency electronic payment initiative before that announcement. It's not that they heard that and thought, oh, we need to build something. And a lot of governments had also been considering it, but it was really Libra laying it down the gauntlet to say, we want to create a global digital currency that caused most of the central banks to have small heart attacks, if not large ones, and try and jump into this race, or at least to add more fuel to the fire and to get these things moving forward. Obviously, I think at this point, China would probably be considered the leader in what they've released with the DCEP, but on a global level, there's things to be discussed about whether or not that's truly a digital currency in the sense of blockchain, because of the way that it is centralized and the way that it is managed, but it is definitely a sovereign digital currency, and that's very important to understand in that. So whether or not in semantics it fits the same thing as what other places might be working on, but we have this tremendous space of sovereign digital currencies, which are central bank backed or not. Corporate projects like the consortiums behind Libra and others, and then the truly decentralized versions of this like Bitcoin and others. And I think as we move forward, we're going to see a mix of that, not in China, because not all of that's going to work there, but on a global level, we're going to see a mix of these sovereign CBDCs, the corporate consortium type ones, and as well as the decentralized versions. However, the DCEP, China would love to see that be a global thing. Afterwards, I think we have a lot to see before that happens. I think that there is, blockchain is about trust and transparency. And I think that right now, as much work has been done in China to increase that and has been done on central bank digital currencies, I think that the world is in a tender spot right now with China on different things. We're talking about COVID, but also just other trade issues and other things. And I think that's going to be hard for their CBDC initiative to become a global thing. Just to really quickly talk about the enterprise blockchain space and then wrap that up. Yeah. So if we're talking about logistics, supply chain, trade finance, food safety, identity, health data, energy efficiency, public services, copyright, all these amazing things, China has seen explosive growth in the public-private projects with the majority of China's financial companies as well as technology giants building those projects. While most of those major tech companies have their own blockchain as a service offer, the BSN, the Blockchain Service Network, is really hoping to be a national kind of open source blockchain as a service platform to really reduce the barriers of entry in terms of price and complexity for SMEs and maybe even individuals to launch blockchain projects. So, I
might actually pick up on that if I may, Ethan. I think it'd be good, we don't have a huge amount of time remaining and we haven't touched a huge amount on the Blockchain Services Network. Ran, if you're still with us, what I might do is ask you to tell us a little bit about what the Blockchain-Based Service Network is, and then perhaps hear from Ethan and John from their comments on what this thing is, and do they think it will really add value to the space. So Ran, if you're with us, we don't seem to have your video. That would be great. Good, we have you back with us. Thank you.
Sorry, we closed the video person, and I was so hungry. We sneaked into
I know
we were speaking. It's 8:30 p.m. in China.
So the Blockchain-Based Service Network, please.
Yes, so Blockchain-Based Service Network is a cross-crowd-based public infrastructure network. The main goal of doing this is just like Ethan said, to lower the price of the SMEs to develop and deploy blockchain service. The development cost can be around 10,000, or if you plus human power, then it could be easily several hundred RMB, which is like I don't know, 30,000 US dollar around that in China. But with the BSN, the cost for SME to deploy blockchain can be lowered to around 200 to 300 US dollar. So this is really a very good encouragement for the SMEs to do something on blockchain. And
it's a government platform that's been developed, but for use by the private sector. Is that?
Yeah, it's led by the State Information Center, and the companies behind it are also like China Mobile, China Union Pay, the big players.
Okay.
But the future of it, we shall see. Now it's also open for globally. I would also like to ask this question to the audience. If you are a SME in Europe or in the OECD countries, would you like to join it in a Chinese operated open source platform?
It's a good question. Maybe I might, Jane, I know that some of your research has kind of looked at this question of SMEs and whether they're going to get into this space. What are your thoughts on the BSN?
Actually, I accepted an interview just before the new Spring Festival on this news. And actually, it is a pilot, and it is a set that has a very broad distributed, and some is in North American and China and different places. It's a very good one, and it's from like mobile, mobile services. And I think the information center offering kind of cheap blockchain-based platforms now in China. Yeah, 1 yuan. Yeah, 1 yuan. Okay. Just 1 yuan.
That's one of them.
They have different advantages. Like from the mobile service, maybe they can have 5G or some other Internet of Things. And if you come from Baidu, maybe you have some thing like AI or some different support. So I think they have their advantages just based on their original part. Their original services. So different ones will choose different services just because they need this part. I think so.
Okay. And that, I mean, it brings up, I think, a related question that Ran was sort of touching on there, and I might ask Frank about this. So one of the questions we had in was around, is the Chinese financial sector just looking at blockchain networks within China, or to establish cross-border operations over these, so have nodes and so forth outside of China, or are these really just domestically focused projects? Maybe Frank and then Ethan, it would be good to hear from you on this. I don't know, Frank, if you can hear us, or you might have just dropped out. Maybe Ethan, while we're bringing back Frank, I'll get you to jump in there.
Caroline, so sorry, I heard a part of your question, which is before I got kicked out and then rejoined. I think a lot of us actually, I think a lot of companies, including PN, we're definitely looking for, we're exporting our technology, not just limited to China, of course. The thing we showed today, the 3D ZigBee technology, the academic paper will actually get published later this year as well. And we do have overseas customers, so it's definitely not limited to China.
Okay. Ethan, are you seeing, what are you seeing from, is it, because it's, I mean, there's also, I mean, I should say, China's got the BSN, Europe's got its European blockchain services infrastructure. Are these all going to match up at one stage, or is everyone developing their own systems, whether it being finance or in other areas?
So I think it's a delicate subject. Even before COVID, there was around the blockchain space and definitely in crypto assets, there is a definite concern about sovereignty and about strategic issues, because we start touching on financial infrastructure, but also if we start dealing with all the trust networks around the world, whatever that might happen to be, but with supply chain and voting and health data and all these different things, there's a lot of focus on sovereignty. And now that we're into this COVID space, a lot of places like here in France are going to push that even further, because the fact that a majority of generic medicines are made in China and India, the fact that all the masks and other PPE were primarily made in China, all those kind of shortages actually created more of a push to pull back sovereignty and to be able to take care of ourselves, quote unquote, whatever country that might be, whether it's the US or France or all across Europe and around the world. So this is just supposition, but I think that that's going to push this discussion even further on regional and sovereign solutions and being careful of who has the keys to the kingdom. So yeah, I think that that's an important issue. It's not a negative statement about China at all on my part. It's simply an issue of I think a lot of governments are now looking at, we need to be careful of, if we go to a central bank digital currency and we put that on, if we base that on some kind of a public blockchain, and all of a sudden for consensus, more than 50% of that public blockchain is being mined or managed or being validated in a specific region of the world, then is there an ability to slow down or even block digital currencies in the way that they're being used? There are some really important conversations there that I think are frustrating. And so again, that's not a Chinese conversation. It's really just about everybody looking at everybody else kind of conversation. So I think that the opportunities to have more trust and transparency means even more cross-border work could happen. But the opposite is also true. The power that this brings to all the trust networks and systems that we have in place that are moving towards the blockchain, or financial services that are moving towards crypto assets, I think there's going to be some serious questions posed about how much any of those is in any one specific country's control. Yeah. But again, this is early in that conversation, but it was already a part of the conversation beforehand of kind of seeing that. And I'm seeing a lot of other discussions in innovation or just national economic strategic type stuff where they're pulling back and saying, we really need to make sure that in the next pandemic or the next economic downturn that we are not so vulnerable to any specific country.
And I think that's a very good point, the sort of resilience. But I think in terms of the cross-border aspect, there's the willingness, whether people want these applications to work cross-border, but also then the kind of the technical standardization, the interoperability aspects that without those, even if we want them to, it's simply not going to be possible if we don't have some sort of coherence, at least, to allow these systems to talk to each other. I'm afraid cut you off a little bit, Ethan, simply because I know we are at time. For those of you who've been watching, you'll see in the chat some of the contact details of the speakers. I really hope you've enjoyed today. I just wanted to ask one or two quick polls that I'm just going to throw up on the screen. One is regard to sorry, that's the wrong poll. We'll move to the next one. Nope, we don't see. There we go, poll 2. Launch it, put it on screen. If we run another webinar, what topics would you like to see covered? So please just give an indication. We talked a little bit about China's central bank digital currency. To what extent it will be blockchain based? I think what we heard from Ran was that it's still a little unclear, but certainly it might have some DOT based elements to it. And you'll see there also a reference to an upcoming piece of work that we'll be publishing on the uncertain promise of blockchain in government. So public administration services being delivered over DLT. Happy to do a webinar on that if that would be of interest to people. And just putting up, look, we've got a bit of a tie there between CBDC and blockchain developments in Europe. So appreciate that input, but also, actually relatively evenly split with the third one, uncertain promise of blockchain. And then finally, I just wanted to ask you all how you had enjoyed the webinar today. Certainly we enjoyed presenting it, and we really hope that those of you who've been watching also enjoyed it. Apologies that we ran a little bit over time there, but just while you're completing the poll, to let you know about some of the latest publications we've had on blockchain, including the most recent on remittances and blockchain. And as I said, we've got one coming up in the next month or so on blockchain and public service delivery, 6 factors for success and failure, and also another one in our series on blockchain for SMEs, this time focused on Italy. Don't want to avoid mentioning our 2020 Blockchain Policy Forum, which we'll be holding virtually in November. So hopefully this has whet your appetite a little bit to find out more about that. Really great to see how many of you enjoyed today's webinar. Thank you very much. We appreciate you joining us. If you have any questions, you have the contact details of our speakers in the chat. You also have our email address and website. This video will be online. If you have any questions, you'd like to reach out to someone that you see or speak today and you don't have their details, just send us an email. Finally, thank you very much to the speakers, Greg, for your introduction, to Ethan, to Soren, Ran, Frank and Jane, very much. We appreciate you sharing your expertise and look forward to talking with you more in the future.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.